Hi everyone, today I am doing a challenge that my husband has picked out for me. So inside this basket is everything that he picked out from my craft room for me to create a project with. And he also put instructions in here, so I am going to be reading this for the first time. So here we go. Okay, so we have, okay. So the challenge is create at least 3 jelly prints inspired by the pop art movement and use all of them in one project. Love Zip. This is my cat that passed away. But this is her toy. So I guess she is ready to create art with me. Let's do this, Zip. So my husband has picked out these basket challenges for me in the past, and he's actually put supplies in them like stencils and paints and things like that. So that's what I was expecting. So this just threw me off a little bit, but I realized I can just kind of make whatever I want as long as I create something that is like the pop art movement. So I thought I would start with this gel plate that I picked up recently, the Speedball gel plate. And I've got all my Speedball inks, and this is a stencil that was gifted to me by one of my friends and viewers named Kim. Thank you for this stencil, and I hadn't had a chance to use it yet. I really loved that it had a background stencil and then the design of it was a stencil, and so you can use them together or separate, and I thought this would really go well for this kind of pop art type thing. I had to look up, I know what pop art is and I know what it looks like, but I had to look up how it was actually created, and a lot of the prints are done with like screen printing, and I wanted to replicate the screen printing part of the process. So I put tulle on the back of this stencil of the bird silhouette, and I taped it down with some painter's tape. This is just pink painter's tape, and I'm going to work with the stencil like this. And so it has this mesh, which is similar to what you would get for screen printing. And then to put the paint onto the gel plate, I used this spatula, which got into the grooves and kind of spread out nicely, because I was able to use kind of like the pointy side and the rounded side. And the feet, that was the hardest part to get the ink in, was the feet, and sometimes the ink would get underneath the stencil. But I would say for the most part, I had a pretty good transfer of the paint this way. Now, I am not very familiar with these inks, and as I was doing this process, I was learning some stuff. One thing I learned is the ink does not dry quickly. It takes a while, and I had put such a heavy coat of paint that I ended up using that tissue paper just to pull off one whole layer off of that bird because it just was not drying. And then I came in with my bright pink color. This is the Magenta, and I put that right over the top of what was left over on my bird. And I just used my brayer to get a little bit of paint color on the back side as well. So this was also me kind of learning how I wanted to replicate this screening process. Also, this bird that I had pulled off, it was still so wet that it transferred onto my brayer off sheet. So I thought, well, I have pink on here. Well, might as well just brayer the bird onto my pink background since it seems to be transferring just on the paper. So that's what I'm doing here, is just trying to transfer some of that extra black paint onto this piece of brayer off paper. And interestingly, the pink from my brayer off page transferred onto the tissue paper. So this is just quite different for me because I'm used to working with the acrylic paints, which dry quickly. So this was pretty nice because I got this print and it still left behind a lot of the same paint on the gel plate, which was perfect for what I was trying to achieve with this pop art thing. So I did blue over what was left on the gel plate. And just doing solid colors, because in the pop art movement they were all about like bold, fun, solid colors. And I got a nice second pull from this, and I thought it looked pretty much the same as the first pull. Just had a little bit less detail, but mostly it's got the gold in there and the black. But then for the third print, I put yellow over the top. I actually repeated that process with the black, except I didn't do the gold part because I had that mesh over the bird now. I just didn't show that whole process. But I pulled up a yellow print this time, and it didn't really look quite as good as the first two, the pink and the blue. So I thought I'd take what was left on the gel plate with my green and just see what I could get to transfer. So I had 2 prints that were similar and 2 prints that weren't really that great. So now I decided I wanted to move on to trying my Gelli Arts plate and working with a medium that I'm really comfortable with, which is acrylic paint, because I really wanted these layers to dry as I was building them. And with the inks, I think it just takes a lot of patience and practice. Another thing I did that's different on this gel plate is I flipped over my stencil so that the mesh side was facing up, and then that way the stencil was stuck to the gel plate a little bit better, and I didn't get as much paint going underneath the stencil this way. So I didn't do the gold on this one. I realized that after I had pulled up the bird. I didn't do the gold details of the eyes and the feathers. So I did gold behind the bird, and then I put just a mesh. This is a wire mesh that I have, and I just got a little texture going into the gold because I wanted to have something in there. And you can't really see that, but I do let this layer dry. So now I've got the 2 layers here, and this is more of like an aqua color blue. And I went almost all the way, but I knew what I was going to be using this project, the papers for, on what project. And I knew I didn't need the entire 5x7. I was only needing that little square amount that I had gotten from the first gel plate. And of course, because it's acrylic, the paint dried nice, everything pulled up, and I could touch it. And it was dry, and my design wasn't going to transfer to another piece of paper if it touched something. So I'm definitely a fan of the regular gel plate with the acrylic paints. So for my next one, I put my little bird down first, and then I put the stencil with the mesh over the top of it and lined it up. And now I'm using some of my perfect pearls. I was trying to come up with a way to get the gold or like a shine to the layers here just a little bit, and I thought the perfect pearls were perfect for that because I didn't have to wait for them to dry, and it didn't make too much of a mess. And it's very light, a very faint amount of gold. And then I put the bird, I just lined the bird right back up, just the silhouette. And now I'll do the same process that I was doing on the other gel plate, just a little bit of black and my spatula. And as I was filling in the spaces here, I really liked the difference of the darkness and the lightness. So I used my spatula to kind of scrape out some of the paint just to give a little bit of interest to this bird. I thought that was pretty neat to do it that way. That looked pretty nice. And then this time I'm going to use an orange. This is just a bright orange color. And I just lined that up right next to my blue. The tissue paper is wet strength tissue paper. And I let these dry for about 5 minutes. Not too long because it's tissue paper, but I need to let it dry long enough so it will pull up everything. So this is what the gold with the perfect pearls looks like. And I think it looks really nice. And it has a nice amount of shine. It even has like a little halo around it because when I remove the stencil, the static from the stencil spreads what's left on my stencil onto the gel plate. So it creates a really neat effect. So I knew I wanted to have 4 of these prints, and I wanted them in 4 different colors, and I wanted them to look like they went together, which is partly why I didn't use the Speedball prints, but also because they needed so much time to dry. I couldn't just go from my Gelli prints to my project like I can with acrylic paints. So I'll use those in a different project, but for this particular project that I had in mind, I wanted to have 4 of them in 4 different bright colors. So far I've got the aqua, the orange, the yellow, and then the last color that I'll use is a bright green color. And since I have green, I thought I would use my pink to outline the bird, just to add a little bit of a different color here. I'm just going through it quickly now that you've seen the steps that I've been taking to do the same thing over and over. And I do like using this candle top as a baron to really press in that bird because it's got more layers over it. And that's been working really well to get a nice print that I can get to pull off of the gel plate. So all 4 of these turned out really nice. They all look to me like a pop art type thing. So pop art, you take the same thing, you repeat it, you change the colors of it because it's a print, and you just add little details and you change them up a little. So I think this really, to me, captured what I understand the pop art movement to be. So I cut those out, and then I had my 4 prints, and I had to decide what project. So I used these 4 coasters that I had picked up at Dollar Tree. I was trying to figure out what to use them for or how to use them. I knew I wanted to use Gelli prints on them. I just hadn't found the ones that I decided I wanted to use until I started this project. And the fact that he said do 3 or more, I thought I would do 4, get nice coasters out of them, and then I have a completed project and I can enjoy the 4 different bright colors around my house. I'm using Distress Collage Medium Matte, and I didn't treat these or paint them or anything. I just went straight to whatever is on this coaster already, what it comes with, and I just put a layer of my Mod Podge or Collage Medium down, and then I had kind of scored where I wanted my little bird to sit on the coaster. So I just kind of lined up those score lines just to get it at least so that the whole bird was showing in this coaster. And I was trying to center it. And then of course it's tissue paper, so I was able to kind of pull it and stretch it over the coaster to get a little bit of a beveled edge showing. And I have this file that I just kind of scraped it downwards and just filed away any of the extra tissue paper. And that worked out really nice because it created smooth lines and it kind of made the paper look like it was part of the coaster, the top part of the coaster. So I thought that looked really nice together like that. Let me know in the comments how many times, if you're making a project like this where you're using Mod Podge or medium, how many coats do you typically do over the top? I only did 1 coat, and I did actually do a little bit of Mod Podge around the edges, the exposed white as well. I did that after I realized I should probably seal that should I have a drink on here and it kind of runs over. I didn't want any to get underneath the print at any point, so I sealed it completely, but I only did 1 layer of the Distress Medium, so I wasn't sure. Should I have done a second coat of the medium over the top, or do you think the 1 coat would be fine? So this part of the process was pretty simple, and it came together pretty quickly, which I like that. After Gelli printing and trying to figure out how to use it as a project. Sometimes those projects can take so much longer than the jelly printing process. So I was happy that this project was a simple one and one that I could enjoy. Alrighty, so that finishes this project, and I think I got the pop culture thing going on here. Let me know in the comments if you think I failed or succeeded in this challenge. And yeah, for anyone that does collaging, let me know your tips on that. Thank you to my husband for giving me the inspiration for what I was going to make today. And for Zip, our little kitty. I should clarify, she wasn't just mine, but I picked her out. And thank you all for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. Happy crafting, y'all.